I'm assuming that, these are fairly early, although I think probably the equipment has changed because they don't look necessarily like circa 1910 toilets, but I think a lot of everything else here is pretty original. High schools that you've gone to, you always have a school office, and I'm not sure where it was, but maybe when they built this connector, this may have been where it was, but I can't say absolute certainty. But it sort of has that look. The original name for that building, though, was the Health and Personnel Building, and so if you had been a student in the 1940s or 50s and you didn't feel well, this is where you would have gone. This is the early, the forerunner of syndicus.
Oh, so close. Everything was just so right there. Because all the students, for the most part, lived in what is now the student ghetto, right? Was that
They lived in rooming houses there. They also, after the late 30s, they lived in the residence halls, Wallwood, Spindler, Vandercook.
Oh, yeah.
And there were only, students numbering in the thousands. So I think it's sometime, maybe by the late 50s where we cracked the 10,000. Yellow paint is lead-based paint, and it was used heavily in residential and commercial applications until the 1970s when it was, banned. These floor tiles here are almost certainly asbestos floor tiles, and again, that was used heavily. I think every elementary school I ever went to had these tiles, and neither of these things are necessarily dangerous unless they start to, disintegrate. It's the flaking, and in the case of lead paint, it's if you adjust it in your child, it can cause neurological damage. And with the asbestos tiles, if you breathe it in, if it becomes damaged and it starts to become airborne, you can have one university classroom had fixed seating here, and I don't know if that was necessarily original or if that was something that was added later. And I've always had my suspicion that this large room too was probably the original. Before we built a library, which is North Hall, there was a very large room upstairs that had the library, and I wondered if it was this room.
The last days at East Hall, let me know if I missed anything. And were all the paths to get down to what's now Oakland, was that all there, or was that put in once it started to get more modern? Was it ever more modernized over here in this part?
Oh, I should remember that because, I've come around these buildings on and off, for years. And there was another path over there that is closed off and pretty inaccessible now. And I think this path has been here for quite a long time, but it was at a point in time they did some resurfacing and added some rails. Because the last real active classroom use on this campus, besides what goes on in the archives, which still goes on, but the speech pathology building. And they were using that building until the new College of Health and Human Services building was constructed.
And so now is it used at all now? Or?
No.
It just, I know some of these were used as storage facilities also.
Yes. I will show you on the outside, because my understanding has always been in his office, the plaque of his cremated remains that are still outside, that they're underneath what was his office.
Really?
And, but I'm not sure that this is the exact configuration because I think these are much more modern, door frames. Although this is an older looking door, but I think they're more modern, and I think this area probably has been modified somewhat, but this is where the administrative offices were, and these were all, when College of Business was over here, I think some of the administrative offices for the College of Business, departmental offices were in these areas, and then when the School of Art was here again, these were studios. All those cremated remains are.
What happens when the building goes, if it goes? He goes with it?
I'm sure they'll find an appropriate place for him. And
Sad that
he
somebody
didn't,
did that.
he didn't necessarily live a short life. Those are the years of his presidency, 1904 to 1936, and he passed away in 1939. Activities, you know, they're tied in with other aspects of history. Moore Hall, which is across the street from the library, was named for Grace and Mary Moore. And Mary Moore was a home economics teacher, and I may be mixing them around, and Grace was the woman who organized and ran the cafeteria downstairs
Wow.
here. And so I think some of this may have been part of the cafeteria, classroom space, and also, you know, studio space. And for many, many years, when you graduated from Western, you know, well into the mid-90s, this is where you would have to come to pick up your cap and gown. You could come here, and then I think they had a space over at the Bernhardt Center. So a lot of people who went to the university in the 80s and early 90s may never have been over to this campus other than to pick up their cap and gown. You know, some room that maybe they were doing something with performance.
I was gonna say like a choir room or
Sort of
something.
it almost has the appearance of a choir room.
Wow, this is so
And
wonderful.
beyond that, that's, you know, that's speculation on my part. And again, all these rooms changed use over time.